These people think that if you're tough enough, smart enough, and mean enough, all this will be there someday.
Hello everybody, I am Fandango correspondent Nikki Novak, and I am beyond thrilled to be sitting with the one and only Kevin Costner talking about his new film, Horizon, an American Saga. He's unzipping, he's getting ready to discuss this epic. It is truly a saga, and congratulations.
Thank you.
First thing I wanted to ask you, 7 years old, your parents took you to the movies every single week.
Yeah.
Was it How the West Was Won? Was that the
that
movie?
Yeah, they did. They went to the movies since my parents just passed away about a year and a half ago.
I'm sorry.
They were together since the 7th grade. So they were 93. And back in the 40s and 50s, the movies were every week. You didn't miss them. But they gave me my love of movies, but I was at a little boy's birthday party in Cinerama Dome and watched How the West Was Won by myself. And I think literally by myself, because I wouldn't leave my seat because it was an intermission. And I loved what I was seeing so much that I wasn't leaving. I was going to watch part two. No one was going to take this experience away from me or take my seat.
And now we have part one and part two that we're going to get to talking about this, but you commissioned this story in 1988.
I did. It was a kind of I don't want to say typical because I hope they're not typical, but it was two guys. It's emblematic of a Butch and Sundance, other than it wasn't that. But it had the trappings of, I thought I was going to do it in 2003, right after Open Range I did with Duvall and Annette Bening.
Last time you directed?
Yeah. And I thought that's what I would do. And then it didn't happen, like life. And then about 9 years later, I started with a writing department. We started thinking about this, and since that one seemed to be so popular in people's mind, they were just burning to make it, which is a big no. They weren't.
But why was it on your heart?
I wrote four more. I just was so pissed. I wrote four more.
Oh, so it was anger?
Yeah, no. I was such a knothead. I thought, well, you know what? Instead of being where it is, I'm going to show how it got to that point.
Yeah.
So there's a fifth Horizon, which is one.
Is there really?
Well, it's 1988. That was the original. I re-engineered everything along with John Baird to get to that movie. So these four, they stand alone by themselves, but they're all connected. But they all came out of this fifth one that's just kind of floating out there right now.
Well, it was very lovely.
So if people like these at all, that I'm not going to have to go too far to make the fifth one.
Now, when you say if people are going to like them, I had a chance to watch it. Thank you for showing it to me. And what I took away from it, there's so much to talk about, but what I took away from it, it didn't have anything that felt traditional about it, even though it is a Western. The way you sort of just bring us into this world very gently, and then all of a sudden there's all these different characters and all these different storylines, and there's so much going on. And then I've only seen part one. I cannot wait for part two. And so I'm wondering for you, this decision to make this cast so expansive, and were there any actors from this cast, because everybody really shines, that you sort of saw in something else and when I have to have this person?
I'm working with so many new actors in it because it just how they line up and how they fit. But I really wanted Will Patton. Will and I were in No Way Out together. We were in Postman together, and he's just an excellent actor. And I mean, he's just more than that. That's kind of too limiting. He's just something special about him, and it was one of the tougher roles of all the people to play because it's just tough, and so I had Will on my mind, and then everybody else, I just opened the universe to what was possible. I had these great acting parts. I mean, they are great acting parts. They're scenes that go on that don't bore, I don't believe, but they go on, and so I reached back for some old friends as I started to round out the cast, but it was really, in a Western, you don't always think of it as great acting parts. You just think of it as action. And that's not the way it is with Horizon.
So can you talk a little bit about how unconventional it is? And we'll get to the release strategy, but also just, like I said, the way it sort of arrives and unfolds, and I didn't want it to end, and I can't wait to see what's happening in part two.
Yeah, I didn't, try to be unconventional, although I'm not afraid of being that, because I mean I have the theory: what if everybody's wrong? You know what I mean? That can happen in life.
Everybody is wrong.
Yeah, but what happens is you get this chance as a storyteller. If they were all sitting around a fire and telling, you would tell yours your way, and you would tell yours this way, and I would get up and people would know what he moves around a little bit. I mean, everybody has a style, and for me, the narrative of the West and it's about the women that are important to me. That's why I think the story feels so rich, is because I keep coming at the women hard. As they enter the movie, they become focal points of how they do things, how they deal with situations. And I'm going to go to Cannes with this movie. I'm taking the 7 girls with me. Period.
Are you really?
Leaving the boys behind.
What about your son? Your son Hayes is in this
taking
movie.
him because he's my son. You know, and
he did a great job.
Thank you. But I'm taking. I can't take everybody because, like, I'm kind of an independent filmmaker and I can't do it. Everybody will walk the red carpet in LA. But the women are going with me because I felt so strongly about what they do in the movie.
Well, there's a great balance between the two. But I want to talk about your character for a second. You've said before that Westerns are the American Shakespeare. And so I'm wondering for you, who is your character? Is he Othello? Is he Romeo? What's his fatal flaw? Because all Shakespearean characters have them, and what's his strength?
Well, I
He's
think
very mysterious.
what I was referencing wasn't so much character as I was the Victorian age of language, when people wrote letters to each other. I mean, the West was populated with a lot of illiterate people because they didn't have the education out there, and I'm one of those. But the people that, even from the Revolutionary War, the way they wrote each other, so we have that. But we found in the language, like Danny Houston has a speech about almost manifest destiny, and it's not the kind of speech you normally see in a Western. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the way people talk to each other. So it's safe to say we aren't a group that just go, yep, nope.
Right.
I'll think about it. I actually say that line, I'll think about it. That's me. That's in 2. You have to see 2. But I just think of our language as this form of entertainment is our Shakespeare. But we have to invest in language and invest in the emotion of these characters. And you do. You feel for them.
Yeah.
You hate them. You love them. You see what's happening to them. You find a nobility in living in the dirt, which they had to do.
Well, it feels like as an audience member, you're just sort of dropped into their lives. It's like a slice of their lives, and it's going to end up being, like you said, a saga. I want to quote you for a second. You said there's fear about doing something a little bit original. So let's talk about this original release strategy.
There's a what?
There's a fear about doing something a little bit original, and what you've done with this release strategy is quite different. Having both parts released the same summer.
Well, in movies, a lot of times we want to follow success, or we want to repeat one. We just make that same movie over and over and over again, or somebody else is making this type of movie, we'll make this type of movie. And in the business of Hollywood, there's nothing wrong with that, because that's actually good business. But it doesn't speak out loud to me, what feeds me, what I kind of want to do, because I want to make all types of movies. And I always feel that movies are my chance to kind of flex and to entertain and to make something that maybe stands up and that you share 10 years from now, 20 years from now, because it's just solid or something like that. That's what I see as the opportunity. So the original sometimes does shake people up a little bit. They're not willing to put a blue jacket on, but once they see it on you, people go, I think how, but you know what I'm saying? Let's face it, not anybody here has a blue coat on. But people step out, and sometimes it's not any different than anybody else, and then it becomes okay. And so I just don't really live my life in fear. I think, why do I have to wait 2 years? I was confident that Horizon 1 will be something that people want to see, so that's why I made 2 right after it. I didn't have to wait, because my story's not over. I'm not waiting. I'm telling my story, and I hope that my relationship with audiences is such that they go, yeah, and they make this their own. They make themselves want to share it.
Well, you said that you really make films for audiences, but I want to know, just two-part question. You have had this story on your heart since the 80s. How do you feel watching it, and what do you think? How do you hope audiences
Well, I wish I was
it?
you. I wish I was sitting in the dark by myself one time, because this is the kind of movie that I would want made for me. That's kind of how I see it. There's all kinds of opportunities when the lights go out. What can happen? Magic, things you never ever forget. And so whatever genre, whether it's a romantic comedy or a baseball movie or a political thriller, you get a chance to affect people. You have your moment, you have the stage, so it's up to me. Have I made something that will hold you in your seat? Have I given you a sense of awe, wonder, empathy? You know, have I moved you? Have I moved you to the point where you want to share the movie with someone else? Movies have that opportunity.
So now that we've seen, or a lot of audiences are about to see part 1, what can you sort of let people know about where they're going on this journey, part 2, 3, and 4, without, of course, spoilers?
Yeah, well, they're tied together. I mean, there was a promise in America at one point. If you go west, if you're strong enough, if you're tough enough, mean enough, if you have it, you can make what's out there yours. You can take it. There wasn't law. There was just a people that had lived there peacefully, not peacefully, but had found an equilibrium for thousands of years, and we stuck our finger in it like an anthole, and that's what that first stake in the ground is in the movie. What we do to people. We upset their lives. But it's a journey, and people would pass people on the side of the road that were dead in graves clearly marked, and maybe the women would say to them, why are we going here? And what does a man tell his family? He just says, they were unlucky and we will not be. It's really kind of that simple. They're so far gone that they had to make it or die. It's not a movie, it's real that way. They had to make it or they died.
Yeah, that's how it feels.
And what happens in 2, that beat continues because it doesn't go away. I mean, it was, you know, when was the West over? It was a struggle out there. And so you're going to see these people fight just to get where they want to go, and maybe that won't be exactly what they expect. That might be something to think about, that it's not kind of how it was drawn. Because there's salesmen in every century, people that will lie to you.
Kevin, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And for everybody watching, you can get your tickets right now for Horizon, an American Saga at Fandango.